Welcome, everyone. I'm here with celebrated astrologer from France, Lynn Bell.
Hi, Maurice. Nice to see you again.
Yeah, we had a similar conversation last year ahead of Omega, and 2023 was such a successful conference.
Yeah, it
Every
was.
year, yeah,
Yeah, it was great. It was great. People were wonderful.
every year we organize uh, what we call a boutique conference where we have a small faculty in the woods, upstate New York. So it's very much retreat style. And as an organizer, I really want to create a powerful connection. It's a one-track conference, so everyone is together to have this experience and not only engage the mind, but also the sense of community. This year, we're also going to have Amir Bey, who is a celebrated New York artist and astrologer. And I recently had an interview with Amir, which you can check on the
Mm,
YouTube channel. So it's an event that is you don't get lost in the crowd, so to speak. And that's the focus, is to have a deeper experience and a deeper sense of connection. So the faculty, Lynn and Rick Levine, are returning this year.
right.
Um, I think it's great to explore some of these themes together. Um, and it was such a nice cohesion and such
Mm.
a nice flow that all the feedback we got from last year was, we want to do it again. We want to repeat. And so I do want to bring some development and some changes. And this year we're also going to have Linda Tucker, who is a spiritual leader, keeper of the sacred white lions. And this ties very well into astrology and the mythology of the white lions, because we are talking about the turning of the ages, and we are talking about how astrology is not just something out there in the sky, but it is actually happening on Earth. And these lions apparently have some kind of a connection to the stars. And something that I've explored astrologically with Linda Tucker is that they are all born during very, very specific alignments with specific fixed stars. And so there's something very mysterious, very powerful that we are going to explore with that.
Well,
And
and I think it's a brilliant idea, Maurice, because I didn't mean to interrupt,
no, no, go ahead.
but just to bring in, because part of Pluto going into Aquarius has to do with enlarging our consciousness to be a new human. And being a new human means actually being aware that other species are conscious and have teachings for us. So I see the bridge and the brilliance of the idea. And I've spent a little time with Linda Tucker in the past during some workshops in Chartres, where she came in as a special guest, and she's quite a personality, and she opens that dimension, a sacred dimension with nature, but with the consciousness of nature and the messages coming in that we need so much right now.
You put it so much better than I do. So thank you.
You're welcome.
It's a great way to describe it.
Mm,
And I also did some work with Ursula Stockter from Mexico, who
mm,
has a presentation called the Zodiac,
Mm-hmm.
and capturing the mythology, but also exactly that, the fact that the zodiac in astrology revolves so much around animals,
Mm.
is not just a random thing. There's more to learn about that, and the fact that these beings are teachers as well.
Right.
And so here you are, and these are your presentations at the event coming up June 7 evening until June 9th at Omega. And you're going to speak about Pluto in Aquarius. We're all in this together. Mars, wild and wildness.
Mm.
And then Jupiter moving into Gemini, which will happen late May,
Mm.
learning a new language. And I just want to say, on a side note, it's very interesting. We can take that Jupiter learning a new language very literally and think about, I'm going to polish my French, or I'm going to, um, yeah, uh, bring a new culture in. But I remember 12 years ago in 2012
Mm-hmm.
was when I got introduced into animal communication with Linda Tucker.
Uh-huh.
And so this Jupiter in Gemini was about communicating with other species in my context, which was definitely a new language. So just putting it out there.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic.
And
Um,
so no, we are now we're recording this mid-January, just ahead of also Pluto moving for the second time in Aquarius, and this is for the long haul. Pluto's going to retrograde for a couple of months into Capricorn, but it's pretty much, for the most of the year is going to be in Aquarius, and that this happens this weekend on January 20th.
yeah, it's, I think, it actually goes back in from November to, yeah, it retrogrades November 20th and then enters Aquarius for what will seem like forever, but it won't be forever, of course, until sorry, it's until September 2nd, and then November 20th it comes out, and
Mhm.
then it's there forever. Well, until 2043.
Well,
So
20 years can be forever.
maybe not. Pluto in Capricorn was 17 years, and it's like a flash now.
I mean,
Okay.
it was the year that Obama came into power, on our side of the pond,
Yeah.
2008, around, yeah. So I wonder if you want to show some slides, or if you're okay with this one. What do you
Uh,
prefer?
well, we can uh, let's yeah, well, I can share a slide or two. Me, me share a screen. Ah, you have to enable participant screen share.
Here you are.
Okay, I should be able to do that. Let me just put that into play mode. There you go. Um, this is obviously from Reflections on Air, and I love this little star in the mouth of the wind here,
Hmm.
right? Because a lot of this has to do with the air element, and the air element works through the ability of our minds to receive the cosmic language, I suppose you could say. I mean, obviously in Gemini, it's language, but in Aquarius, um, I often think of it as we could say the blueprint, because Aquarius is a Saturn ruled sign in traditional astrology. It does come in with a form, it comes in with a structure, but our minds, our perceptual sense may or may not be attuned to receive. We might get
Mm.
distorted. We might have static. I mean, this
Yeah,
is
yeah,
what Pluto is showing us is where all our static is in terms of the cosmic plan.
yeah.
And so one of the things that Pluto does is, hey, look, the plan that's been received and that's put in place maybe isn't the one we were supposed to be following. We misinterpreted here. We built according to this dimension, and that's not working. So Pluto, in whatever sign it's in, is saying, it's time for some things to be gotten rid of, for some things to be alchemized, to be given a new form. And but of course, Pluto also shows reveals certain, it can reveal certain distortions, right? And they can be on a very large scale in air signs. What we love to, we astrologers are so happy to refer to the American Revolution, which, brought in a new model of a republic. It brought in a model of a republic that hadn't been seen in a really long time in the world, and that successfully gave it basically gave us what we would say in French a souffle. It gave a boost. It gave
The
energy to it.
wind.
A huge development, wind, air, yeah, that's, we're using the element. Inspiration, it gave inspiration to creating a whole new society. And of course, one of the things that's been happening in the past few years is we've become very aware of the success of that model and also the disadvantages of that model. Okay, so we're in that kind of mea culpa process.
Hmm.
So we're seeing, well, what worked and what didn't, right? Like, no, on the other hand, I don't know how you see things, Maurice, but um, there's also a relationship between the individual and the collective in Aquarius. Individuals become more strongly individual, and collectives become more strongly collective. Okay. So in this image, what I've written is that there can be outer events, wind and water, that reshape the world. And in the 1500s, there was the biggest storm ever seen in Europe, called on St. Lucia's Day. And I think like 50,000 people drowned. I mean, it was flooding in Holland, and it totally reshaped the coast of Holland, reshaped the coast of England. So we have this experience of the wind and the water, which is
And
part of
that was a
Aquarius.
Pluto in Aquarius time.
Yeah, yeah,
Mm.
it was a Pluto in Aquarius. Let's see if, here it is. It was
Mm.
actually not 1500, 1287. This is the day of the famous flooding. It was an enormous tempest.
Hmm.
Um, and you can see it was Pluto entering Aquarius that was reshaping our relationship with the elements, which I find very interesting that this would have happened in the 13th century.
Well, what's also fascinating is the trine to Neptune. Neptune obviously relates to water,
Mm.
and the trine is not necessarily an easy fix. It brings whatever it brings, and really fascinating chart.
It is fascinating. And of course, we have the sextile between Neptune and Pluto ongoing right now. And so the power of the changes, however we see the changes in our environment, uh, this this actually, in some ways, this configuration gave birth, allowed Amsterdam to become a power, because before this, Amsterdam was too far inland to have much importance for shipping. But the changes in the coastline, it meant that the water opened up so that Amsterdam could be a major harbor, you know, so it's very confusing, this
But it's
process.
so relevant to what we are facing
Yeah.
now.
And but it also, certain ports in the UK had the same experience of major flooding and silting over, and they stopped being used.
Hmm.
So it actually shifted the center. It
Hmm.
actually shifted the center of movement in
And
some ways.
power.
You know, we can obviously use this metaphor for our current world, except, you know, we see a lot shifting right now in the world. Now, but anyway, I want to go back to the other image because again, what I thought would be interesting to focus on today is that star breath, right? Because that's a little bit like the lions you were talking about that Linda's going to bring in, is that we are receiving a new celestial inspiration when Pluto goes into Aquarius. And I think we can't be too Pollyanna-ish
Hmm.
about it either.
Hmm.
There is, everyone can see that some rather unpleasant choices are being offered up.
Hmm.
And I think what Pluto in Aquarius, one of the things that's clear to me that Pluto in Aquarius is offering up, and this is why including the consciousness of the lions is so important,
Hmm.
is that we have to stretch out beyond the temptation of polarity
Hmm.
to make our consciousness to see we're not the same, but to have a kind of respect for people who are not perceiving the same truths as we are. We have to, we're being asked to recognize that cosmic impulse in other people. And if we become blind to it, then in the collective is taken over by the shadow of Pluto and Aquarius, which is one group of people has a truth that they impose on another.
Yeah, and the sense of superiority that comes with that.
Yeah. Okay. And and that sense of superiority and hierarchy and, you know, the more narrow Saturnian interpretation of Aquarius,
Hmm.
which is hierarchical and dominance, whereas Aquarius has that um, ability to reinvent the world.
Yeah.
And you know, we're seeing that reinvention of the world with, you know, there's so many of us have talked about AI and all the new tools that are coming in, which is of course part of Pluto and Aquarius. And it's like, how how do we conceive of ourselves as humans? You know, it's again, this new idea of um, what we are. You know, that during Pluto and Aquarius, the last passage, both the French published something called the Déclaration des droits de l'homme, so the rights of man, and the Americans later followed, because the Bill of Rights wasn't in the initial Constitution, with a Bill of Rights, you know, all men, we know the Declaration of Independence, all men are created equal, but the Bill of Rights was the right to, uh, because we are free, and of course it was only men who were free back then.
Hmm.
And you know, there's an issue about that right now in certain cultures
True.
where the freedom, the gendered freedom, um, uh, is an issue. And this whole idea of what does that mean to open up the possibilities, not just for a few, an exclusive group, which is also part of Aquarius. Aquarius can be the special ones.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, those who are chosen to decide for the others, you know, like, I
Yeah,
mean, it's not, Aquarius is a little more complex than a lot of people think.
I agree. So there are a lot of contradictions, and at
Mm,
the same time, it is part of this layering of our humanity. And
mm,
because you bring the AI component, which the automation of everything, and I'm reading about the Middle East war and how AI is playing a very important role in both supposedly strategic, advanced technology, but it ends up being very destructive. And so
Well, dehumanizing the dangers.
dehumanizing and you know that level of efficiency has its price. But I remember, you know, we were together at the Astro Bash conference in
Right.
October, and we had a panel and people asked questions, and one of them was about, you know, where is astrology headed? Which many people, you know, associate us also Aquarius with astrology, at least partially. And it was interesting that on the one hand, yeah, more apps, more AI, you know, we're thinking about how Aquarius is going to advance the technology of research and process immense amount of data to be able to show how astrology works in ways that, you know, is very difficult to do manually. But at the
Mm.
same time, you know, there's a greater movement of astrologers who want to reconnect with the naked eye experience and want to learn more about the visual, you know, understanding of astronomy. And so there's, you know, this takes me to your other talk, the wild and wildness, is that
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly because as Pluto and Aquarius can take us, into the fantasy of the hybrid human, right? Both a hybrid in the sense of genetic
yeah,
modulation, and AI, and people who want to be bionic. The wildness, I think, I want to talk about Mars because I think it's, when you just think about, we're talking about, I just had to get a new pair of glasses for the computer, but how much time can we do this? Can we sit in front of the screen? That's again one of the reasons coming to Omega is so great. You're in a beautiful environment, you're in nature, you're with other humans. And what more to honor the Pluto and Aquarius by contacting that kind of embodied human experience. So wildness, it's almost a remembering that we think that advancement comes from the newest thing, but that's not necessarily true at the moment of at every change of every age. And you work a lot with the nodes, Maurice, and I've been talking so much about the North Node in Aries right now, and this idea that the instinctive self is absolutely fundamental as a balance right now. Right. So the wild and wildness to me is that necessity of contacting our instinctive knowing that doesn't have to do with what any machine is telling us, or
yeah.
we all know that AI has hallucinations, so it just, when it doesn't have an answer, it just makes stuff up.
Mhm.
And although that's very amusing, apparently recently there were some lawyers who used some AI and cited some cases that didn't exist because the AI had hallucinated the cases. And they,
Interesting choice of words also.
Mm,
Yeah. Well, it's going to be interesting, definitely. And I also track personally the movement of Uranus, you know, in
of
comparison
course.
to, but it takes me also the wildness to this polarity of the lion and the
Oh, yeah.
human, because the Aquarius is the angelic human, you know, in its highest form.
Mm,
And the lion, you know, is the solar principle. And so in our astronomy and in our astrology, it's interesting to see that the lion and the human are facing each other.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that it's the Aquarius's responsibility for a very large level circulation of the life force, you could say, of energy, of the cosmic mind, but without the heart,
Mhm.
which is symbolized by the lion, without the heart, the noble heart, but which is also wild,
Mhm.
that doesn't make any sense, right? It
Exactly.
becomes cold and cut off,
And dangerous.
right?
And I'll just show a slide.
Okay,
Um,
I'll stop the share.
and so what's important to understand is that the theme of the conference, chosen as humanity rising in the Leo Aquarius age.
Mm,
I just want to highlight, first of all, that the age of Aquarius is not necessarily happening from one day to the next. It's more of a process. Even we can see this astrologically, how any planet at the tail end of its sign starts to already bring themes from the following sign. And so there are a lot of debates about when the Aquarius age is starting and when is the exact date. But in at least as far as we're taking this conference, we understand it's a process and there's an overlap of the fading of the Pisces and the emergence of the Aquarian.
yeah.
Um, and what's important to understand, I just want to show this slide, is that I don't have the full graphic here. These are things we are going to talk about at the conference
Mm,
of the precession, the fact that the Earth in its cycle is not a perfect sphere. And as a result of the fact that it's not a perfect sphere, it's wobbling. And in its wobble, it basically creates a phenomenon called the precession of the equinox. And that's what determines the ages, which means that you see this circle. The Earth is moving. This is the circle of the North Star. So the North Pole points to the
mm,
North Stars, and it moves 1 degree every 71.6 years, every 72 years, approximately, to create a full precession of 360 degrees in 25.7 thousand years. And so
mm,
these ages are measured according to this shift and what will be the sign rising on the March equinox.
mm. Right,
So
you
right
are right. You're a
now,
Southern Hemisphere person, so
exactly. So what I wanted to say is that right now the North Star is Polaris because that's where the current angle of the Earth is. But it will, it once used to be Vega opposing it. It once used to be Deneb, etc. So as this precession occurs, as the ages are turning, we also have a different North Star, which is,
mm,
directional. But importantly, going back to the Leo Aquarius, is if we speak about the equinox, the March equinox shifting to Aquarius, the September equinox is shifting to Leo.
mm,
And this is why we need to look at the transition of the ages in from an axis point of view, including the southern hemisphere component, and not only as one sign. And it's very obvious, obviously, from a mythological point of view, that we talked about the Pisces age, and the polarity is Virgo, right? And so we have the fisherman and the virgin themes, which were really strong during the Pisces age. And I think this is going to become more and more apparent
Mm.
as this shift is happening. And that's why the lions gain so much importance in our cosmology here.
It's great to explain that in that way. I also see, Maurice, you're going to do the royal stars. I talked about Formalhaut last year. So it's great you're continuing with that.
Absolutely. And, there's a lot of, again, astrological perspective about what the real meaning of the royal stars are. And are they really royal? um, and I will be very happy to share a lot of personal research and experience
Mm.
um, working with these royal stars, which are exactly, forming a cross in the sky. I mean, very closely so.
Mm. Mm.
So indeed, what an event, so high-minded. And I think we are taking your advice, Lynn, in what you said here by combining the high mind with the heart.
Yeah,
And that captures the Leo Aquarius. We're going to have our mind blown, and we're going to make deep personal connections
right.
and
And
a new
that
model
helps
of
us.
leadership.
And that helps us find the new language, which is my other topic with Jupiter and Gemini, because I've been thinking about Jupiter Gemini in Gemini, and it has a terrible reputation in traditional astrology, which is, I'm sure, I think, exaggerated. Like you can focus, of course, on what isn't working, or you can focus on what's working. But it's true that Jupiter in Gemini offers different possibilities. And while, it can take us in all kinds of directions. Sort of like a ball of yarn spinning, falling out on the floor. Um, you it also is this sense that if we stay with our old consciousness, like Jupiter and Gemini is really asking us to hold a different form of consciousness than we've had for a while. I mean, we'll be coming off, of course, we know we're going into the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, which I'll be talking about in Berlin in
Mm.
April with another group. But the Jupiter in Gemini happens at the very end of May, and it's asking us to be able to hold something stereoscopic. How do two images become united? How do split images find a new unity? And none of this seems very easy. And so what we're looking to do is actually hope to leap into something that allows us at least to enter a form of consciousness where we're not split.
It's very interesting. I've noticed in the chart of people that Jupiter in Gemini is often present when there's a really interesting blend of cultures.
Mm.
And my teacher, my Kundalini yoga teacher, one of them at least, who was
Mm.
kind of a rigorous personality. And originally, he was a New York Jew who, lived immersed in that culture. And in one way or another, got involved into the Kundalini yoga, which involved him with the Sikhism, a Sikh tradition from India, and he became a radical Sikh. And he would go at the airport with his sword and his big turban, and
These sideburns.
Yeah, and long beard because they can't shave. And so it was such a Jupiter in Gemini fusion of extremes and differences, and it worked for him. So
But it
that,
probably was disconcerting for other people, as like weird marriages, like I was sort
yeah.
of, but we need people who are able to do this,
Mhm.
sort of rather than, suddenly not being able to speak each other's languages. Um, so, I see all this is what I'm going to be talking about has a certain coherence. Yeah. And I
Well,
think having an artist, inviting Linda, who lives with the wild, and then having an artist like Amir there, who's bringing in our ability to create images for the new energies that are coming in and to help other people create images. I think that's fantastic.
I mean, I am so looking forward to this program.
Yeah.
One logistical thing, I will invite people to look at the Omega website. It's not always easy to find, in their website to find where everything is. So you can type in the search engine Humanity Rising, and it will immediately come up. You will also see, the prices. We talked about the fact that there's a price for the conference, and then if you stay on campus, the price includes your accommodation, but also 3 meals a day because we are in the woods, and they offer healthy buffet, which are extremely generous
Mm.
and a really nice experience. So
And
that's a
it's
side
true,
note.
I have a friend who was there who had been to Omega before and she said, "Oh, that food's terrible." And then she came and ate the food and said, "Oh, it's really good. Delicious, actually." Like so uh, obviously I think they did a great job with the food. And really good quality.
Yeah.
Mm.
And it's always good to end with food. Thank you so much for your time, Lynn.
Well,
And
you're welcome, Maurice. It's always a pleasure. I'm
and
looking forward to seeing you again in June.
it's going to be a wonderful time of year.
Yeah, yeah, really great.
Many blessings. We'll be in
Blessings.
touch.
Okay.